But I wanted to call attention to two things recently that formed together a worrying trend that I've seen recently in transphobic circles, namely both J.K. Rowling and libs of TikTok associating explicitly trans women and trans people with straight male sexual predators. Not transsexual predators, although they do that as well, but they have seemingly run out of examples because there are so few actual transsexual predators that they have started conflating just regular trans people with predation. And it's a very intentional thing, and I'm going to go over it all on stream today. And what I'm talking about is not, don't get me twisted, I am not saying the old, and this is another turf lie that people like J.K. Rowling like to put out there, the idea that trans women, their idea of trans women are just straight men who are putting on a wig and a dress and going into places to prey on regular women, which is not true. As we will show, I have plenty of articles, fun little articles that we can read that actually give some real statistics on abuse survivors, how best to support those survivors, and what demographics are actually at risk. And I'm gonna spoil it for you. It's generally not the people that libs of TikTok and J.K. Rowling and people like them are blaming. In fact, the way that they go about blaming people like trans women for assaults leaves the door open for so many other people to actually commit those assaults. So many other people to actually be victims, which we will talk about in a bit. And I had somebody argue this with me the other day on Twitter, and you've probably seen it because I've been arguing with a lot of British transphobes. But they have this idea that, or the thing that they like to say as like a gotcha is, you know, they'll be like, so you only believe that somebody just says they're a woman and they're a woman. Which on its surface, yeah, that's true. Because generally speaking, if a trans person comes out of the closet and is still early in transition, you should respect their pronouns. Even if they aren't passing, even if they haven't had any cosmetic surgery, even if they don't know how to do makeup or dress correctly being, you know, in their eyes, what would be considered passing. I don't think there's a correct way to do any of those things, because gender expression, just like everything, is on a spectrum. But to them, they would say that there is a correct way to do it and you are not doing it correctly, right? That's part of the thing, is that they'll say like, oh, you think a woman can just put on a wig or a trans woman, a man can just put on a wig and they're a woman. And it's like, no. When people say that, okay, if somebody's new in transition, you should still respect them, that's just basic decency. You should just respect their identity, respect who they are. It does not, as a question and as a framing device, it doesn't account for the trans person themselves, the intense dysphoria they go through, the measures they go through to make themselves pass, which can include physical, like long, hard physical fitness regimens, hormone regimens, completely having to learn new social cues, new things like makeup and clothing, and how to fit both of those better to your body. It's an assertion that doesn't actually hold up to reality. And they know that, but they don't actually want to argue on the merits of that. They just want to throw out quick buzzwords, throw out quick gotchas, and be pedantic about it online, which is very annoying. Because if you haven't been keeping up, J.K. Rowling has been on a tear lately because of a new hate speech law in Scotland that she has been just willfully trying to fly in the face of. And people have said that she won't be charged with anything, which of course she won't. She's a billionaire. Like, they're not gonna, unless she does something truly abhorrent, which, hey, she might. Like, she's on the cusp of straight up Nazi enabling. From J.K. Rowling, there's no difference between those who hushed up pedophile priests to protect the church and those trying to make it unsayable that some trans-identified men are sex offenders. Both prize an ideology more highly than acknowledging risk and preventing harm to women and children. First off, there is nobody doing this. There is a massive difference, Joanne, between somebody saying, hey, you know what, let's keep the whole priest thing on the DL and just move them to another parish and they'll deal with it over there. There's a massive difference between that and what happens with trans people who do get arrested for sex crimes at a very, very small portion of the population. A very, very small portion of a very, very small population. But it does happen, because guess what? Those kind of people are in every group. There are cis women accused of sex crimes. Literally any group, you are going to find people who assault others. These two things are nothing alike, and it's actually kind of embarrassing that she would try and use a legitimate systemic issue that does not get addressed, that gets covered up repeatedly, and try and liken it to something where people actually do get arrested, where justice actually does get served. And most of the time when you actually look at also British TERFs, and this is the fun part, like this one where somebody is defending Monroe Bergdorf, who's a trans woman, which there is nobody who would look at this person on the street, and trans phobes love to say, oh, we can always tell. Get out of here. Come on. That to anybody is a woman. And you want to know something? She lives as a woman. She fills the role socially as a woman. People approach her as a woman. They see her on the street as a woman. Now, this is where the gender essentialist stuff comes in, because people like Joanne would be like, well, she can't give birth and she can't breastfeed and she didn't grow up as a girl, and all of these things that, first off, we know trans women can breastfeed. This has been a whole point of contention. She can't give birth. A lot of cis women can't either. And you'll see up here J.K. Rowling saying, so if trans-identified men, which, like, again, at some point it just gets hysterical to look at someone like this and be like, yeah, it's a man. Like, really? Okay. J.K. Rowling saying, so if trans-identified men are pretty enough, as judged by you, a man, women ought to agree they're women. It's not really up to you personally agreeing, Joanne. It's socially constructed. That's the whole point of gender. For example, if somebody has to go through the same things a cis woman does, walking down the street, if they have a door held open for them, if they get catcalled, if they get possibly targeted to be assaulted or robbed. Now, those things probably wouldn't happen if somebody was easily read as a man. If somebody looked like your average cis man. And they might. There are, of course, cases on the outer edges, but not nearly as much. It's the way trans women are treated moving through society that is parallel to the way women are treated. They go through misogyny. They are targeted for attacks. And the problem is, people like Joanne and this rhetoric enables and encourages that. It enables this idea that they are all, that people like this, who've probably been on hormones for years and years, who live as women, who just want to live their life as happy as they can, Joanne is encouraging the ideas that this is a possible predator. That this woman going to the same bathroom as you, going in a separate stall, may somehow end up putting your life in jeopardy. Again, stick around to the end, because we're going to show that's not the case, and it has been proven as much. Elena Farrell, the myth of universal girlhood falls apart under scrutiny, and the idea that trans women aren't abused and traumatized in the way that cis women are is ludicrous. Yeah, that's the other thing is I had a TERF say today, one of the things she listed for, and I don't identify as a woman, but of course everybody just judges. They're like, oh, you'll never be a woman. They don't even bother to know anything about what they're criticizing. But one of the things she listed for reasons I'll never be a woman was I never grew up as a girl. And it's like, okay, even in the things that you're listing as concrete reasons for what a woman is, what the hell does that mean, growing up as a girl? Because that could mean so many different things based on so many different factors. The way a white girl grows up is entirely different from the way a black girl can grow up or an Asian girl can grow up. Okay, let's multiply those different demographics by their socioeconomic background, how much money they have. Were their parents divorced? Did their parents remarry at any point? Did they all have grandparents? All of these things can drastically change the variations of what a childhood looks like, especially when it comes to gender, how those things are perceived, how they're reinforced socially between different groups, different subcultures, different cultures. A girl in one household, a girl from a Pakistani household, for example, will be held to different social standards and social norms than a girl from a Jewish household, than a girl from an evangelical trad Christian household. So like Elena, you're absolutely right. It's just this, like, they throw out these buzzwords and they think everybody has had the same experiences as them. But at the same time, they appeal to these experiences that they know they've never had. And I'm not saying that all TERFs and all gender criticals have lived perfect, easy lives. That's very likely not true. I'm sure some of them have gone through horrible experiences as a result of being a woman in society, much like trans women do. But the way they use that as a cudgel to beat on others is just, it's ridiculous to me. Like I was saying, it's just like the gay guys who want to pull up the ladder, the LGBT without the TQ, queer people that you see all the time now on Twitter. They're like usually white, usually in their 30s, 40s, and have bought into shit like Joanne sang for no real reason other than that, from what I see, they feel that the fact that they are part of a group that has been oppressed historically has given them a sense of self-worth, and they feel threatened by other people being oppressed or identifying as oppressed in the same way. It's so weird. So weird. News you can't see anywhere else. Yeah, hi, that's probably because it's not news. Now, this might take a little while to go through because Chaya Raichik is terminally online. And tweets shit all the time. But there's one post I want to talk about in particular. They keep, first off, as we discovered earlier, so now after she's found this proof, and this really ties into trying to use cis straight people as proof that trans people are deviant, which doesn't square because those two things aren't the same. But since finding, quote unquote, and really being shown footage of a trans woman being harassed and filmed in a bathroom, which is illegal, the lady got thrown out for good reason, Chaya has been on a tear trying to turn this into her Bud Light. Like, she has been working so hard to really, really put a dent in Planet Fitness stocks, and it's not working out too well. It's getting a little sad at this point. But as we're seeing here, and we'll get down to the other one, but it seems Planet Fitness attracts sexual perverts. I uncovered subreddits dedicating to posting nudes at Planet Fitness, as well as multiple accounts and videos of people acting out sexual fetishes in their gyms. And now there's straight up porn too in PF. So creepy, this appears to be a pattern. gym porn is a like pretty big genre. Getting exercise makes people horny. That makes sense to me. Planet Fitness is like the biggest gym chain in the country. They have thousands of locations, I think we saw last time. Well, it was thousands of locations, right, chat? So, wife got horny at the gym, fucked her at Planet Fitness. Now, should people be doing that? Probably not. It's a all ages area. Like, I find it kind of distasteful. However, public stuff is a kink. And if you are sure that you are not exposing yourself to minors or children, that you are being safe, you're not doing anything where people are going to get endangered, it's honestly a little bit hard for me to see a big problem with it. Like, as far as the problems in society go, at that point, it ranks pretty low on the list. I have a hard time really caring. Chaya saying, I just discovered there's an entire subreddit dedicated to people posting nude sexual photos while at Planet Fitness. Chaya, you are discovering... I love how this is going to be her, like, turn into discovering porn subreddits. Like, I can't even imagine the shit she's going to come up seeing next. 6 months old, bottom of display. Thank you for going and looking it up. Okay, here's another one. Disgusting. Dude acts out his sexual fetish in a Planet Fitness and even peeks under bathroom stalls. Planet Fitness seemed to attract these perverts. What's stopping this man from entering the women's restroom and doing the same thing? The fact that it's the women's restroom and he's a man. Like, that's the thing, is it's this where does it end causality. It's like, where does it end? Probably here. Like, probably, like, this seems to be the thing that he likes to do. So, like, I'm assuming he's probably gay. He doesn't seem to be gender nonconforming in any way. I mean, I don't know, I can't tell. But he decided to do it in the men's bathroom, so it's kind of a non-issue if he decided to do it in the women's bathroom. And there's also nobody around. Like, he is not exposing himself to other people. Do I think people should be doing this? I want to be clear. No, not really. Like, I get it as like a fetish. And ultimately, again, as long as you're not exposing yourself to minors, as long as you are not harassing anybody, stalking anybody, hurting anybody, if it is in an empty ass locker room, there's nobody else there, ultimately I think it's harmless, but still like a little bit distasteful because you never know who could walk in. Like, and that at that point, I realize with a fetish like that, the risk is part of the like thrill of it or whatever. But when you're playing in public, like, you can't. That is a risk I cannot condone taking, honestly. Oh, here it is. There we go. And here is the point that I wanted to get at. In between Joanne saying that trans people who paid the price for their crimes, who go to jail, are the exact same as priests who don't pay for that, we have this from Chaya saying, disgusting pervert takes photos of his exposed penis and masturbates in front of customers at Planet Fitness. This is the environment that Planet Fitness fosters. What's stopping these perverts from just walking into women's bathrooms at Planet Fitness? Is anyone safe at Planet Fitness? Yeah, because the fetish for this person is obviously being in the men's room. Being around other men. And sneaking pictures. Again, something that kind of violates other people's privacy. It's something I don't really condone. But it's also not women. It's also not a man invading women's spaces, like you want to threaten here. And by simply saying, what's stopping these perverts from walking into women's bathrooms, she is, in the mind of her audience, purposefully tying it to the story of a trans woman who is new to transition, who is just shaving her legs. Clarity Star, I do question the value of streams like this sometimes. Like, we all know Chaya's the worst. Yeah, well, Clarity Star, we know Chaya's the worst. I am not debating that fact. But I want to draw attention to specifically how people like J.K. Rowling and Chaya are conflating people who have nothing to do with trans people, to create in their audience's mind the idea that all trans people are potentially violent and dangerous predators, because that is the idea that people like J.K. Rowling ascribe to. And they've argued it for a while. So let's go and look at some other facts that have popped up specifically around statistics of sexual violence and abuse and bathrooms and when trans people use them. Because this debate has been going on for so long that we actually have statistics to go by. Statistics that disprove the ideas that trans people are these violent, dangerous predators who are going to just willy-nilly assault people, or that men are going to pose as trans women to assault women. From 2016, USA Today, the imaginary predator in America's transgender bathroom war. If you're like 99% of America, you look at pictograms, predictable gender binaries to guide you towards the appropriate toilet. A person in pants on the left, a person in a dress on the right. If you're a woman, it's irrelevant that you have a vagina, are wearing jeans, and can't recall the last time you donned a triangle dress to a dinner party. You know to hang a right while men go left. The signage isn't literal. It reveals how culture wants your gender to look. It reveals what door it wants you to walk through. The bathroom is a bastion of segregation. It's where we sort people. Civil rights battles have been fought there before. Now, with North Carolina and Mississippi passing laws that ban transgender Americans from using bathrooms that align with their gender identity, another battle has begun. Now, this was in 2016. At this point, this is almost a decade ago. 8 years. And I want you to keep in mind how little of their arguments have changed and how little of it has proven true over time. Proponents of anti-trans bills, which are sweeping the country, purport a twofold argument about safety. A man is a man no matter how he dresses, so letting him into a woman's bathroom is absurd. And two, male perverts and pedophiles disguised as women will troll women's bathrooms and sexually assault our wives and daughters. But the National Center for Transgender Equality, Human Rights Campaign, and the ACLU say there is no statistical evidence of violence to justify the laws. They argue the bills are irrational, conflict with federal law, and veritably endanger trans people. So what is the crux of the issue? Quote, the anxiety isn't men in women's bathrooms, it's about masculinity in the wrong place, says Catherine Frank, director of Columbia Law School's Center for Gender and Sexual Law. Quote, it's portrayed as a threat to women, but on a much deeper level, it's about what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. This talks about transgender people, back with Laverne Cox and Caitlyn Jenner. The National Center for Transgender Equality estimates that transgender people make up less than 1% of the population. We understand transgender people exist, but we don't understand who transgender people are. The American Families Association, a conservative activist group, has gained nearly 1 million signatures from people pledging to boycott Target over its inclusive transgender bathroom policy announced this month. A statement from the AFA, which is classified as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, says the policy means a man can simply say he feels like a woman today and enter the women's restroom, even if young girls or women are already in there. Again, not paying any attention to how being trans actually works. As I was talking about, remember when I did that whole thing earlier where I was talking about how they're like, oh, well, a man can just put on a wig and say he's a woman? It's like that doesn't actually happen. This thing does not happen in real life. Chase Strangio, a staff attorney with the ACLU's LGBT and AIDS project, says the solution to a modesty problem is not to expel people from public spaces, but do a better job with privacy protections. Quote, we can take measures to protect privacy in bathrooms and locker rooms and other public spaces for people who, for any number of reasons, including young people who have experienced trauma, need it. Sex is biological, gender is cultural. How we understand it, how we apply it isn't destined. Challenging the sanctity of sex segregation in the bathroom may rattle our ideas of masculinity and femininity, but what happens when it begins to erode our humanity? Tyler Beebe, a 27-year-old trans woman who lives in Brooklyn, said she would prefer a world that didn't judge genitals so harshly. Quote, trans women are killed for using the men's restroom, and they're jailed for using the women's restroom. In the end, what choice do we have? And that is exactly the way people like Joanne and libs of TikTok want it. Regardless of what they say. They have shown time and time again that they do not actually care about trans people at all. From The Advocate, cis woman mistaken as transgender records being berated in bathroom. A woman in Las Vegas says she remains shaken from her experience last week when another woman berated her in a public restroom for being transgender. The problem is that she's not trans, and as she put it, regardless of whether she had been, the entire situation was plainly wrong. A 24-year-old cis woman was driving with her boyfriend. She said she had to use the restroom. As soon as I got in, I went straight to a stall. About a minute or so in, I start to hear a woman being extremely aggressive. At first, I wasn't hearing exactly what she was saying until I started hearing her say, quote, trans, figure out your identity at home. They better not come out of there. That's not allowed. That's a boy, and they think this is okay because it's being taught in schools. Which is rhetoric like you can just easily find from Chaya Raichik and Libs of TikTok. Like it's just right there. And here it is. Here's that same rhetoric being used to harass someone tangibly. Jay had recently cut her hair extremely short. She realized the woman was referring to her. Quote, I don't know why I knew because I've never had this issue since cutting my hair. I take out my phone, I start recording because my first thought was I don't want her saying I did something in the bathroom and accusing me of anything. What happened next is captured in a video that Jay posted to her TikTok account, where the video was viewed more than 4 million times. Ah, look, after publication of the story, TikTok took down the video and Jay received a warning that the content violated TikTok's policy on grooming. What did it have to do with grooming aside from mentioning trans people? Something. Again, thanks, Chaya. Figure out your identity in your bedroom, one can hear a woman saying with a raised and aggressive voice, seemingly speaking to another person in the restroom. I wouldn't come out if I were you. A boy, it's a boy, the woman can be heard griping. It's a child. Are you a man or a woman? The unidentified woman asked Jay as she encroaches on her personal space, standing very close to her. Why does that matter? Jay asks. Well, because you're in the ladies' room, the woman replies, and I've gotten called out several times for being in the men's room, and you're going to be called out for whatever you're doing. So what are you identifying as today? Again, we see her just jumping to these same conclusions that you'll see TERFs, gender criticals, libs of TikTok followers jump to all the time. Like, oh, you just change your gender every day. What is it? This is just a woman with short hair. That's it. And that's enough to be harassed. From Teen Vogue, another woman was allegedly harassed in a restroom because someone thought she was transgender. This one from 2016, though there are no reported incidents of transgender people attacking others in public bathrooms, the incidents of transgender people being attacked while trying to use the restroom are well documented. Let's open that up for next. Now, thanks to the atrocious bills that have made bathrooms a political battleground, we have a report of a woman who is harassed in a public restroom because someone allegedly, wrongly, suspected she is transgender. A 22-year-old Connecticut woman was verbally harassed on Friday while washing her hands in a Walmart bathroom. Amy Toms was wearing a baseball cap over her newly shorn hair because she had just donated it to cancer victims. Another woman apparently took Amy's good deed as a cue to express her transphobia. She said, "You're not supposed to be here and you need to leave." The video response to the incident now has nearly 50,000 views. I realized when I was washing my hands she thought I was somebody who is transgender. In her video, Amy makes a really important point that allowing trans people to use the bathroom that corresponds with their gender identity does not invite crime into bathrooms, which is an argument many are using to pass discriminatory bills. Quote, so I think what a lot of people are getting all up in arms about is they're like, oh, this gives an invitation to guys to put on a wig and go into the women's bathroom. Like I've been saying. Amy said, if a guy was going to commit a crime in a women's bathroom, this law isn't going to invite them to do it. Because people like J.K. Rowling want you to go around, and Matt Walsh and a bunch of other people who like to perpetuate this myth that trans people are these like sacred calves of modern liberalism and progressivism. That nothing bad ever happens. They're just getting hired all over the place and life is super easy and fun for them all the time. And this is not true. 82% of the suspected perpetrators of child sexual abuse in a study sample were at the time of the offense or had been at some time involved in a heterosexual relationship with a close relative of the child they victimized. So, this is something that we're going to see again and again in these statistics. Overwhelmingly, as much as people want to say, oh, trans people and strangers are predators, stranger danger is a real thing. Always, of course, observe stranger danger. But overwhelmingly, the people who are actually at risk of being abused are at risk of being abused by people they know, close friends or family members. And mostly straight men. In their study sample, researchers found that a child's risk of being molested by his or her relative's heterosexual partner was over 100 times greater than that they're being molested by someone who identifies as being homosexual, lesbian, or bisexual. A recent study of 103 transgender women in Massachusetts found that approximately 60% of the respondents had been forced to have sex against their will, and 38 had been subject to multiple incidents of sexual assault. So, from a sample study of 100 trans people, 40% had been assaulted against their will. No, sorry. 40% had been subject to multiple assaults. 60% had been assaulted against their will. But again, people like J.K. Rowling want to say, oh, well, trans people, they go through the world with male privilege. This is from Plan Street. According to RAINN, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, an American is sexually assaulted every 62 seconds. This means that over 500,000 people are raped or victims of sexual assault every year. To say there is a sexual assault crisis may be a dramatic understatement, especially given that 63% of sexual assaults go unreported. So let's go through some statistics that kind of affect the things that Rowling and Chaya Raichik say. 91% are women. I feel like most people know that. 1 in 2 transgender Americans will experience sexual violence. Now, the truth behind that doesn't really square with the ideas that, oh, trans people are always the perpetrators. They're never the victims. Oh, trans people go through life with male privilege. Of course, look how everybody just bows down to them. As we see, the reality is much different. Here we go. Here's another interesting thing. And this is a really important part that completely gets overlooked. 93% of sexual assault perpetrators are known by the victim. Of those molesting children under 6, 50% were family members. And this is something that you uncover. When I was doing my research into the Catholic Church for my Matt Walsh videos, I got so mad reading through the stories of abuse that had been overlooked and parents who had no idea it was happening because, of course, they trust this person. Now, it's because of things like that. These structures and people who tell you, oh, you're supposed to trust these people, but you're not supposed to trust these people. That these rates are as high as they are. Pointing a finger and distracting everybody by saying trans people are predators. Watch out, trying to paint them all as violent degenerates. Allows real predators to slip in unnoticed and continue working unnoticed. But, of course, libs of TikTok. Rowling, of course, they care about survivors, right? Not really. They don't. They care about pushing their agenda. They care about getting more followers, getting more money. They care about being seen ideologically as right, even though they aren't. At the end of the day, they don't actually care tangibly about survivors. 73% of all assailants are known by the victim, such as acquaintances, family, or romantic partners. 99% are male. 50% of assailants are over the age of 30, and 57% of them are white. NBC News, no link between trans-inclusive policies and bathroom safety, study finds. There's no evidence that letting trans people use public facilities that align with their gender identity increase safety risks, a UCLA study finds. The study is the first of its kind to rigorously test the relationship between non-discrimination laws in public accommodations and reports of crime in public restrooms and other gender-segregated facilities. Quote, opponents of public accommodation laws that include gender identity protections often claim that the laws leave women and children vulnerable to attack in public restrooms. Again, they don't actually care about that. They don't actually pay attention to the realities and the statistics around how those people are preyed on. They would rather point fingers at a group that is not doing the preying. Something important to note. But this study provides evidence that these incidents are rare and unrelated to the laws. The data were collected prior to the 2016 passage of Massachusetts statewide non-discrimination law that protects trans people in employment, housing, and public accommodations. Research has shown that trans people are frequently denied access, verbally harassed, or physically assaulted while trying to use public restrooms. According to Jody L. Herman, one of the study's authors and a public policy scholar at the Williams Institute, quote, "This study should provide some assurance that these types of public accommodation laws provide necessary protections for transgender people and maintain safety and privacy for everyone." Opponents of the non-discrimination law have been trying to repeal it since its passage. The group Keep MA Safe, founded less than 2 weeks after Governor Charlie Baker signed Senate Bill 2407 in July 2016, argues that the law will enable people with, quote, "evil intentions to prey on the vulnerable." Again, this law protecting trans people is not going to stop people who already want to do that. Statistically, those people are likely to be well known by the victims. Or somebody will just assault somebody if they want to. LaCroix boy, so what if this dude is just, in this tweet, is just flashing his erection at the bathroom at Planet Fitness? How would a bathroom bill stop him from going into the women's room? It's interesting you should say that, because it absolutely won't. It wouldn't. It would have no effect. Also, he's not doing it in the women's room to begin with. He is doing it in the men's room. Like, that's part of the whole sexual fetish. The idea that, like, again, as we were talking about in the beginning, the whole point of Chaya bringing up these things, of J.K. Rowling bringing up these unrelated things, is to paint every trans person as a potentially dangerous, deadly predator. The statistics don't show that. The glut of time and incidents, like how many, because even if, and I want if a TERF is watching this, I want you to consider something. Even if, and I'm sure there have been people who said they were trans women who assaulted people. I'm sure there is a case of a trans woman or a man who claimed to be trans doing this. I think I remember one of a guy recording under a bathroom stall. Like, I'm not saying there's not going to be perverts who are going to try and take advantage of this goodwill. I've never said that. But statistically, take the few of those and compare it to every time a trans woman has used a bathroom or locker room without incident. I'm willing to bet without incident wins out pretty heavily, regardless of the way that people like Chaya Raichik want to portray it.